Okay, so we're going to have a look at an ordinary level production budget question. This is from the 2008 ordinary level exam. And if we read where it says here in the question, it says Boyle Limited manufactures two types of telephone, and landline phones. So they measure or they manufacture a red line and a blue line. I suppose I should say that on the left hand side here is the question, and I've just put the answer here on the right hand side so that it's easy to see where the numbers are coming from. So they manufacture two types of telephone, a red line and a blue line. The sales of each type of telephone and other relevant information for the year ended 2007 are budgeted as follows. So they tell you a whole pile of information here. They tell you first off how many telephones they expect to sell, 1400 red, 900 blue, and how much they expect to sell them for, 190 for red, 280 for blue. They tell you the expected costs of finished goods. Now, finished goods are the actual telephones. So they expect to have an opening stock of 340 and 160 respectively, and a closing stock at the end of the year of 275 and only 70 blue phones. Now, this is a manufacturing company, so they're making these things. Now, material X and Y, I don't know, maybe that's plastic and electronics or wires. We don't need to complicate that. We just know that there's a material X and a material Y. Now, to make a red phone, you need 18 grams of material X and 11 grams of material Y. So you read horizontally there to see X and Y. And to make a blue phone, you need 15 grams of X and 14 grams of Y. And the expected price per gram for this stuff is €13 and €17. All of this is just information which we will use piece by piece in the answer. Now, of course, again, there are stocks, opening and closing stocks of the raw materials. They start off with 370 grams and 290, and they at the end of the year they have 410 and they have 360, or they wish to have. Budgeting is futuristic; it's planning into the future. It takes 5 hours in the factory to make a red phone, and it takes 8 hours of labor time to make a blue phone, and we pay our staff €12 per hour. Now that's all of the information. Here is what we were asked to do. We're asked to do 5 little budgets. Part A is a sales budget, then a production budget, a materials usage budget, which is about the raw materials, materials purchases budget, and then finally a labor budget is about how much wages is going to be paid. So I'm going to show you how to do these budgets now, and I'm going to be taking the information from the various places here and we're going to lay it out like we have across on the right hand side of your screen. So let's go with that. Now first off, I'm just going to go up here and get a highlighter so that I can use this in my work. So first off, a sales budget. So a sales budget we're going to look at first. And you set it up with your red and then beside it your blue phones. And this is how many units we intend to sell. And we're going to multiply that because of course we want this in units and in euro. So we're going to multiply it by, this is our sales, and this is how much we're going to sell. So it is just 1400 units by 190, which gives you 266000. And you do the same for the blue, 900 by 280 gives you 252,000. And these are the budgeted or the expected sales for red and blue telephones for Boyle Limited for the coming year. That's what we are expecting to sell. Now, then we're going to look at the production. Now, if we want to sell 1400 telephones, well then, I'm just going to highlight this for a moment. If we want to sell that many, well then we need to make a sufficient amount to meet those sales. So here is our budgeted sales, 1400. How many phones do we need to make in order to meet that? Well, the obvious answer would be we need to make 1400. but actually we already have some made, which is our opening stock. And at the end of the year, we also want to have some going forward to next year called closing stock. So therefore, what you need to do here is you need to subtract the opening stock, that 340, and that is here. You need to subtract this because you do not have to make that. You already have that in the warehouse. But you need to add on the 275, which is this, because if you wish to have that at the end in your closing stocks, well, then you have to make it during the year. So therefore, this is like the opposite of our normal cost of sales, because of course we're kind of working backwards to get our production. So therefore, we're working backwards from your sales number, taking away the opening stock and adding the closing stock, which is reversing our normal function. And you get this many phones is how much you have to make. If you want to sell 1400, bearing in mind you have some opening stock and you have some closing stock, you need to make 1335 units. You do the same over here for your blue line. It is sales minus what you already have, which is your opening stock, add on your closing stock, which you need, and your actual production level is 810. This is how much you need to produce. Units needed to produce. Now that is our sales budget and our production budget done. Then we're going to move down here to our raw materials. We are doing a raw materials usage budget. How much of X and Y are we going to use to make this stuff? Because we have to buy the raw materials in order to make our phones, and we need to know that we have the proper amount of raw materials on hand from our suppliers to keep our production going. So, to make a red telephone, here's our red telephone. Over here you were told to make a red telephone you needed 18 grams of X and you needed 11 grams of Y. Now we know that we want to make 1335 of them, so therefore it's 1335 by 18 for our X, and it's 1335 by 11 for our Y. So this is for material X, and this is material Y. And you multiply both of those out and you're getting an amount of grams of X and Y which is required to make red telephones for the year. But of course we're also going to make blue telephones, so therefore you take your number from here, this 810, and you're going to multiply that by 15 and 14 respectively, X and Y. So it's 810 by 15 gives you this, and 810 by 14 gives you this. And then you simply add together all of the grams of material X that you need for red and for blue to get your total. This is your total amount of grams of X required. And this is your total amount of grams of material Y required. You're just adding the two together. And that is part C done, which is the material use budget. Now, of course, we do need to go down and say then we need to buy some of that material. Those materials X and Y, we need to have it there. But again, we do have, so you bring down this, we do have an opening stock of X already and a closing stock, which we need to factor in. Here is our opening stock of material X, and here is our closing stock of material X. And just like above, we don't need to buy the opening stock, we already have it on hand. So you take away the 370, but you do need to buy the closing stock because otherwise you won't have it at the end of the year. So you take your 36,180 and you take away the opening stock and you add on the closing stock and you are left with this amount of grams. And the price per kilogram, per gram, is 13 euro. So whatever that number is, you multiply by 13, and this is the money that you have to spend to buy material X. And then you do the same process for material Y. You're taking your 26,025, which is the answer from part C, and you are subtracting the opening stock, and you're going to add on the closing stock, and that gives you this 26,095, and you're going to multiply that by the 17. So it's all about knowing where the numbers are coming from. And when you do that, you get 443,650. Now in higher level then, we would add these two together to get our full amount purchased. So I'm just going to show you there. So you take the total amount that you are buying of X and Y, and the total cost of materials purchased is approaching 1 million. It's 914,475 with these two added together. Now we're just going to look at part E, which is the labor budget. What wages do we have to pay in order to make these telephones? Well, again, you're going to go right back up to how many you're going to make. This is the key number up here, this 1335 that you got. It's really important you get that right at the start because you're using it throughout the question. So you're making 1335 telephones. It takes 5 hours to make it, and you have to pay your staff €12 per hour. So therefore, when you multiply that out to make red telephones, 1335 of them at 5 hours by €12 per hour, that's a total of 80,000 in wages that you're going to have to pay. We do the same for blue. Our 810 from up here, 810, it takes longer to make a blue telephone, it takes 8 hours, but we still pay people €12. So therefore it's 8 by 12, and you multiply that out to get 77,760. And again, you add these two together to get your total labor cost. That is the sales budget. Let's go back to show you that one again. The sales budget done, which is simply multiplying the units to be sold by the selling price. The production budget, this is where you have to factor in how many you need to make, factoring in your opening and closing stocks, subtracting opening and adding on closing. Then when you get these numbers, you apply that to your raw materials to find out how much of raw material X and Y you're going to use. And then how much of material X and Y do you need to buy? Well, again, you have to factor in your opening and closing stocks and then multiply it by the price per kilo. And then finally in part E, just to recap again, we're talking about how much you need to pay your staff. You're going to use again your figures of your productions, that your units that you're going to produce, multiply it by how many hours, and then multiply it by your wage rate. All of those calculations give you the budget answers which we were looking for in parts A, B, C, D, and E.